Hey, deserving listeners, 90-Day Fiancé, the last resort. Let's see what happens.
Oswelu, I saw him clearing messages, and it could have been innocent, but when I asked him what he was doing, he tilted his phone away from me and said he's just cleaning out his messages. So I was like, it's a little suspicious.
I just cleared all my messages. I didn't hide or do anything.
Maybe, but you would be stupid to believe that, given Kalani's account. It's possible that it's totally innocent, but given the track record, like I said, everyone would be stupid to assume that that is true. Now, as a therapist, you could just, this is what I would be thinking. I'd be like, well, it could be true, might not be true. That's not really the issue for therapy. The issue for therapy is, well, how can we, what do they want to do? That would be the first question, because I don't even know if she wants to improve the marriage of this. So I would start there. And if she said yes, then we'd work on trust. I don't think she does, though. I think she's about to tell him things that I think she passively hopes will end the marriage.
My mind went racing. That made me see that basically our whole relationship is just going to be both of us thinking the other person is cheating.
Not necessarily. If the two of them, namely him, were to engage in meaningful and productive long-term infidelity recovery and a lot of therapy just for him to grow up as a human being, then there is a future, possible future, where she doesn't think about him cheating at all. He of course, would have to stop cheating, which apparently hasn't happened.
So I thought if he's going to talk to other people, then I should be able to talk to other people too. So I unblocked the other guy. And then he told me that he wanted to come see me.
Yeah, it's just more evidence around that hypothesis that I had about her, that due to her upbringing, she has a passive approach to decision-making, or lack of assertiveness, or lack of knowing what her rights are. I wouldn't be surprised, of course y'all wouldn't either, if inside of her there's a robust need and desire to divorce Oswelu. But there's a lot of barriers to that. There's uncertainty, there's the kids, there's judgment from the outside, there's worry that maybe she won't meet someone else or whatever. Maybe religious oppression as well, pressure from her family to try to make it work. I can't imagine that happening, given what at least I've heard people tell me about her behind-the-scenes life, that she is LDS, and I don't, there's a lot of different types of LDS. I've known a lot of Mormon people, and I have seen things, at least in my circle, that are more run-of-the-mill in terms of more relatable. But then I hear about Mormons that are very unrelatable to me, and they might even be in the same town. So anyway, I don't know what sort of Mormon she is, but it's possible that not only sexuality-wise, not only gender-wise, but even just generally. I did that whole deep dive on IBLP and Gothard and the more problematic evangelical movements and just religion in general. And it really just drove home the way in which, as if you're born into a cult family, or at least somewhat of a cult family, and it operates in a particular typical way, then from day one, you are socialized to not think for yourself and to be terribly ashamed of your impulses, particularly when they contradict what the church or the leaders are telling you to do. And so you never have this development that needs to occur where you start to think for yourself and you have a way to evaluate, to make decisions regarding tough decisions like this. There's a lot of things at play, right? It's not just good decision or bad decision. Both decisions, both doors, options have bad consequences, People who don't want you to do one or the other or both. And so you have to have a way to sift through that yourself. And if you have been denied that opportunity through indoctrination and through a system that makes children feel like they don't matter, that they're inherently sinners or horrible, then you don't have that ability. And so I don't know. It's just a huge leap of speculation, but I don't think it's very speculative to speculate. It's not a huge leap of speculation to speculate that she seems to have a passive approach to decision making. And it was just exhibited once again by what she just said there. I'll rewind it, but she says that because none of what her narrative there wasn't any a vibe of personal choice on her part. It's all things that are happening outside of her. So she's saying, I'm sitting there and I noticed that Asuelu is deleting texts, and I looked and he turned his phone away. So, of course, I thought then if he's going to get together with people, then I'm going to get together with people. So I unblocked that guy, and then he reached out to me and said he wanted to meet up with me. There's a little bit of volition in there, a little bit of choice in there, but because Asuelu did this thing, then I just unblocked someone, and then boom, this other guy wants to be with me. And it's possible that all that is accurate. But where is her this is what I've been saying I would work with her on, is I would say, where are you? What do you want? Okay, yes, Asuelu is cheating, and he might have been cheating in that moment. Okay, yes, this guy wants to be with you, and you unblocked him, but that's not inviting him over. He wants to come over and see you. Do you want to see him? And then if she said yes, which she might not, it might be several sessions before she can even possibly answer that in a certain way, and it can be confusing for everyone. But when people are in connection with themselves and they have an idea of their emotions and their needs, they will speak from that place. They'll be like, well, I don't know, I want to, of course, but there's another part of me. So, you can have uncertainty and still be in connection with yourself, but I don't know. I don't know how much of that she has. So anyway, so I would really drill down on that. It's like, what do you want? And if she said, yes, I do want him, I do want to see him, then, and by the way, the way that I will hear from people like her, and it's not a bad thing. I'm not denigrating them. Of course, it's due to trauma. They've never been allowed. They might even have been punished when they actually did make choices for themselves, like dressing in a certain way or kissing a boy at school or something, and then they get completely blasted and shamed by the entire church or something. Anyway, so what I will hear from people is they will say, well, I don't mind. I wouldn't mind if he came over because he's a nice guy. And I would say that's not answering the question. Do you want him to come over? Well, he seems to really want to come over. I'm not even joking. They won't answer the question because they don't have access to an answer to the question. But they do know what they can tolerate. So everything is based on what they can tolerate. They'll be like, well, I wouldn't mind that. And that would be okay. And, one sort of litmus test for this, and there's no way to know just from this, but often it is associated, is you will ask them a question, would you like spaghetti tonight? And they'll say, sure, or okay. But that doesn't answer the question. I didn't ask you if you were okay with spaghetti. I'm asking you what you want from inside of you. I'm not asking you what you would tolerate. I'm asking you what you want, and to, want something and express that you want something and know you want something, you're grabbing for something, then you had to have been allowed to do that. And so a lot of responses are like, okay, sure, that sounds okay. Yeah, I can deal with that. And that career, they seem to really want me over there. Or my friend, they seem to like me. Instead of I want my friend, I want my career, I want the spaghetti, I want this marriage. And everyone deserves to have that. And I don't know if Kalani has that. It takes years to develop that, but everyone deserves to develop that. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. It's a new year, so of course it's time for New Year's resolutions. But often those are just manifestations of internalized harmful voices that tell us we're not good enough. So instead of making a resolution to change something, let's recognize that we are already good enough. Now, most people think of therapy as a place for us to work on our problems, but there are several schools of thought within the field of psychotherapy that adamantly reject that paradigm, like narrative therapy and solution-focused. Instead, these clinicians help us focus on what we're already doing well. And by helping us do that, data shows that we often will gravitate towards more beneficial patterns. Well, one place you can find such therapists is on BetterHelp. If you're thinking of starting therapy, it's definitely worth giving a try. So celebrate the progress you've already made. Visit betterhelp.com/Kirk today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Kirk.
So I unblocked the other guy. And then he told me that he wanted to come see me.
You hear that, right? So then he told me he wanted to come see me. Instead of the way she was wording it to her friends, which was still kind of in that direction. You know, what I would be so much more encouraged by is if she said, you know what, I've been stuffing my feelings and my needs for too long, and I don't want to be with Asuelu anymore. And I don't know if I want to be long-term with this other guy, but I definitely want to see this other guy. I feel it inside of me. And yes, I should have told Asuelu, but you know what? I made a choice. I wanted to lie to Asuelu because I just didn't want to deal with the drama. So I made that choice to do something unethical against my rules of telling the truth. I made that choice, and I met up with this other guy because I wanted to see him. And I don't care if this results in Asuelu leaving me or our relationship ending, because that's where I am. I've thought about it. I've made the choice. I know what I'm doing. Okay, she could have done the same thing, but said it that way and felt it that way, and I would be so much more encouraged about her future. With this scenario, I am worried that, okay, fine, things end with Asuelu, but this next guy, what's going on there, right? Who knows? Who knows what's in Kalani's future? It's not, we often look at these situations and say, like, Asuelu bad, new boyfriend good, you need to be with new boyfriend. But Kalani's issues are carried through all those relationships until she has a connection with the self and her needs and her wants and learns how to be assertive and wrestles with, and because it's not just an emergence of your assertiveness. There's a lot of complications to emerging assertiveness. It's not just like, I'm going to assert myself, and that's part of it. But there's all these messed up complications for people, typically, like judgments and barriers and misperceptions and schemas. Like one problem will be that as I am working with people to become more assertive, this isn't always the case, of course, but they might start to judge themselves for being too assertive, even though they're not even close to being assertive. And they will say, well, I hate people that are always imposing their will on other people. It's just so annoying. And I feel like I'm being that person. Or they will want to assert themselves in as passive a way as possible because they are terrified of actually standing up and speaking to someone, such that when we're working on assertiveness, they will start to lie to themselves and to me about what they want so they can get out of even facing their own assertiveness. And, I am very clear to them that I would never judge them or require them or pressure them to actually be assertive in the outside world. That's up to them. But, when you talk about assertiveness, it's normal for people to bring up things like, oh, I want to talk to my boss, and we'll talk about it. And it will be pretty clear that I believe that they deserve to be able to speak to their boss and that they might benefit from doing so, not only for the topic at hand, but also their own development of their comfortability with being assertive. And the client will sometimes it'll be hard, right? And then they'll come in the next session and they'll be ashamed because they didn't confront their boss or whatever. And then they might tell me that they did talk to their boss and everything worked out. And then they just start lying, and then I will believe it, and I'll think, okay, well, looks like the assertiveness thing is working itself out. And then we start talking about something else. Meanwhile, the client hasn't changed at all. They're just perceiving me and projecting onto me their abusive, controlling parent and assuming that I'm going to harm them if they don't do what they perceive me to want them to do. You know what I mean? It gets real messy. It's not just this rosy, flowery, wonderful experience of emerging one's assertive. It's rough. And that's why it takes a lot of time and it takes a special kind of therapeutic relationship.
Where he was to talk about things, and I went to talk about things, and I really was going to just go and talk and try to figure out my feelings for him and my feelings for the other person. But then we ended up doing other things.
So again, she's speaking passively, like, look, I was just going to go over there and talk about things, and then we ended up doing other things. Instead of, I wanted to get together with him, and I went over there not consciously thinking I'd get together with him, but, to be honest, I did want to get together with him. Now, maybe behind closed doors, she'd be able to say that. Maybe she's softening the blow for Asuelu. But in this context, if she were softening the blow, which I don't know if she is, I think she might actually be speaking from that place I was talking about earlier, I wouldn't recommend that she soften the blow, because that obscures what she wants. Because if she wants to be with this other person and not Asuelu, then everyone needs to understand that as soon as possible, so that everyone can make the choices about the future, mainly her.
Take some deep breaths.
Okay, most people, including myself as a viewer, a spectator, I wouldn't say that I don't have sympathy for him, big picture, but I do have sympathy for him in this moment. This is hard for him. Again, it's like, now you know how it feels, and you basically create, and it's not his fault that she did it, but it's his fault that she was in a place where she didn't care about the marriage enough to refrain, right? It's his fault that she even met the guy, right? Because he gave her a hall pass. Anyway, so, at the same time, given my hypothesis about him, I genuinely think that he's suffering in this moment. And that was a good move by the therapist to say deep breaths, because the way he's reacting, it looks like and I couldn't tell, but it looked like, in terms of the edit, that his breathing seemed to be fast. It's one of the precursors to having a meltdown. There's nothing wrong with having a meltdown, but people could become volatile. I might say deep breaths, and I might also say, do you need to walk it off? Because you can, take a stroll, or would you like to take a stroll with me, or would you like to lay down, or something like that? I've done that in sessions before.
So what's happening for you right now, Kalani?
The therapists are doing good. They're just staying out of it for the most part, which is a good move. There's really no reason to intervene at this important moment. Some therapists will feel the need to insert themselves.
A lot of the time with Asuelu, things just are very hard and very complicated. And I feel like with him, I just have to fight to even get like an ounce of kindness or affection or like love. And I don't have to do that with the other person.
Yeah, I get that. And it makes sense. And if I were the therapist, this is great, because this is, I think, at the core of everything. I think this is where a self is found, okay, and how do you feel about that? And what is that? How does it make you feel? What do you want from that? Where is the path forward? What do you want, given that, what do you want to do? Do you want to work on things? Do you not want to work on things? If you want to work on things, what do you want to do? And that can take many, many sessions with someone like her. And I'll also say that I've said this before, that, well, yeah, you don't have to work hard with this new guy because you barely know him. I mean, God, I mean, maybe this relationship, if it continues, will be perfect, but there's a chance he could be even worse than Asuelu. That's not unheard of. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.